FHS season tickets.
Welcome into another episode of FHS Season Tickets. I'm Michael, and today I'm joined by a guest, and that is Matt Craig of The Athletic. Would you like to introduce yourself?
What's up? I cover the mid-majors for The Athletic, specifically the Fieldhouse, which is the national college basketball platform headed up by Seth Davis.
Yeah, make sure to go follow Matt on Twitter at Mr. Matt Craig, I believe is what it is, and also go subscribe to The Athletic. So we're just going to jump right into this, starting off with what has been one of my favorite mid-major teams in the country and a team I've been riding with on my gambling picks, and that is Nevada. Do you think they're clearly the best mid-major team in the country? Obviously, we're not going to count teams like Wichita State and Gonzaga as mid-majors. And also, how far do you think they're able to go in the tournament?
Yeah, I mean, people on Twitter are incensed every week over how I draw the line with mid-majors, and I think it's really murky because programs, especially at the top of the Mountain West and the top of the Atlantic 10, they're big programs. They have a lot of money, they have a lot of resources, they recruit really well, and they don't necessarily look like mid-majors, but if you look at it, I mean, the Mountain West was a one-bid league each of the last 2 years in the NCAA tournament, so that's kind of why it's fallen under that distinction. So the way that we at the Fieldhouse determine mid-majors, it's any school not in the top 7 conferences, which is the traditional football Power Fives plus Big East and the American Conference, and then we also exclude Gonzaga just because they have such, resources and tradition and that sort of thing. But to your question, yes, Nevada is the best mid-major team by that distinction, by a long shot. In fact, even if UT Arlington, who was my number 2 mid-major team, had won last night, a big game against Northern Iowa, they did not. But even if they had won, I still would have had Nevada in the number 1 spot. They're so talented, especially with, the Martin twins and Jordan Caroline, the 6'7" switchability of that front line. They shoot the ball extremely well. And the thing that's impressed me the most is they're extremely physical. I mean, they body you the way you would expect from like a Duke or a Michigan State, a powerhouse team. They don't look or play at all like a mid-major team. And to your question about how far they can go, I mean, I would not want to see this team really in the regular season either, but I would not want to see this team in March Madness just because they have dudes. I mean, even though they lost on Tuesday to Texas Tech, the Texas Tech coach had this quote. I put this in my mid-major power rankings today. He said, "We really couldn't stop Nevada. They're so good. They space you out. They have pros. You can't guard some of those shots. It's like Kobe Bryant out there." So, I feel like that says it all.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of Nevada. They've covered every game except for actually that Texas Tech game where I had them plus 5.5, and unfortunately the game went into overtime and a foul with 3 seconds left let Texas Tech steal a victory against the spread there. So we're just going to hop into the team you mentioned. I had this question for later, but we can jump into it right now. Do you think Kevin Hervey and Eric Neal is the best 1-2 combo in mid-major hoops? And also, is anybody else going to step up for UT Arlington to keep them consistent, especially after a tough loss to Northern Iowa last night?
Yeah, it was a great game last night, and they were playing on the road. The Cloud Center in Cedar Falls was pretty full. I won't call it a sellout, but it was pretty loud. And those Northern Iowa guys, I mean, they're just like the San Antonio Spurs of the college ranks. They just make plays in the crunch time, and they were able to make enough tough shots right there at the end to win. But UT Arlington is another team that you do not want to see in March Madness. They are extremely talented. At the front end, yes, Eric Neal and Kevin Hervey is the best 1-2 punch in mid-major basketball. And honestly, I mean, I haven't gone through the power conferences, but they're amongst the best, point guard, big man combos in all of college basketball. I mean, the way Eric Neal can penetrate with those short dribbles and quickness, short area quickness, and then how Kevin Hervey can beat you both in the post-up game and spread deep. I mean, he hit a 3 last night several feet behind the three-point line. Those two guys are awesome. And I would even contest what you were saying about other guys because 7-footer Johnny Hamilton inside, he's been really good for them. Kalen Wilson, he's been hitting like over 40% from three. I mean, they have a complete team. They have 8 seniors, and they returned from a team that won 27 games last year. They are a complete team, and had they won last night, clearly I would put them as the number 2 mid-major teams in the country. They didn't, so I ranked them at 5 below Northern Iowa and St. Mary's and Rhode Island, but they are extremely good.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of UT Arlington. Their game against Alabama was very impressive. Just players on both ends. Colin Sexton just kind of took over, but just UT Arlington was so impressive going into that atmosphere and only losing by 1 point. And it's been a shame not having UT Arlington in the tournament the past couple of years because I want to say they have over 50 wins the past 2 years, but have just not been able to get it done in their conference tournament. Just how impressive has the Missouri Valley been after losing Wichita State? You'd think it probably the conference overall level is going to go down, but they've just had so many good wins out of conference. Teams like Missouri State, Northern Iowa, Loyola of Chicago, getting that big win over Florida. Just what have you seen from them so far?
Yeah, absolutely. You're totally right. The Missouri Valley has overperformed what they were supposed to do by a huge margin. I mean, I would say I think the Mountain West Missouri Valley Challenge showed that the top teams in the Mountain West are far stronger. Your Nevadas and Boise States, UNLV, they ended up losing to Northern Iowa. They're really good. And San Diego State is really good as well. But the Missouri Valley is deeper. I mean, even Evansville, who was picked second to last in the conference, has looked really good this year. Obviously, Loyola pulled off a huge win against Florida this week. They're 9-1. Valpo's 8-1. Missouri State has won 6 in a row. They're 8-2. And that's not even including Northern Iowa, who's been the best team in the conference by far. And this conference is extremely deep, and they're doing what they need to do, which is keep their RPIs high by winning all their games so that those conference games mean more. Now, I really don't think this is a 2-bid league. I mean, you said we're going to talk about this and later, so I won't touch on it too much, but Northern Iowa is the only chance, and even then I think they would have to go something crazy like 30-5, which I don't think they will. This conference has been awesome, and the teams have been really good, but I don't think they're going to get more than one team in the tournament.
Yeah, I didn't even realize Valpo moved to the Missouri Valley. When did they leave the Horizon League?
This is the first year. Yeah,
All
this
right.
is the first year, and when Wichita State left, they brought Valpo in to fill that 10th team spot.
Let's go into another question here. Do you think that this year's Rhode Island team is better than last year's Rhode Island team? Because I was really high on them. I had Rhode Island making the Sweet 16. Unfortunately, they lost in a very tight game to an Oregon team who ended up making a huge tournament run. I know that E.C. Matthews has been a little banged up this year, but when he gets back, do you think that this year's Rhode Island team is better than last year's?
I mean, that's tough. Last year's Rhode Island team was really good. You're absolutely right. And they lost Hassan Martin, who is really one of the better players in Rhode Island history. And they lost Karan Iverson as well. I had a chance to talk to Dan Hurley last week, and he was saying, losing those front court players is huge for them, and they don't have a lot of front court talent this year. But I think when E.C. Matthews, who is arguably their best player, and then also they've had Cyril Langevin been hurt as well. He's probably their best front court player. Neither of those guys have played since the Nevada game, and they've still went on and beaten Seton Hall and Providence without those guys. So I do think when this team's at full strength, they have the chance to be better than last year's team, just because their guard rotation is awesome. I mean, Fats Russell, I didn't know that he was going to be doing what he's doing for them this year as a freshman. And Coach Hurley told me last week that he really thinks that Fats Russell will lead the conference in scoring at some point in his career. Not this year as a freshman because they have so much talent there, but at some point in his career, at least once, he thinks he'll lead the conference in scoring. So when this team gets Matthews back and Langevin back, I do think they'll be better than last year's team.
Yeah, and their schedule has been really impressive so far. Obviously, they have a loss to Nevada and also a tough loss to Virginia and also Alabama, but you mentioned the Providence and Seton Hall wins. Those are 5 really good basketball games for an Atlantic 10 team to be playing before conference play, and I've been really impressed with them, even though they do have 3 losses. You wouldn't assume that a mid-major team with 3 losses would be impressive, but they've definitely been very good so far this year. Next question, we're going to be hopping into your experience in South Bend watching your Ball State Cardinals upset Notre Dame. Can you just describe the atmosphere there and just how special of a moment it was for Ball State?
That was one of the coolest moments, really, of my entire life. I mean, I went to go shoot highlights for the Ball State Sports Media organization that I worked for, Ball State Sports Link, and I really wanted to go I had never been to a game there at Notre Dame, and I really wanted to go for the cool atmosphere, and I assumed they were going to get smacked. I mean, Ball State was 19-point underdogs. There was really no chance that Ball State was going to win that game, and then Notre Dame played really bad, but Ball State just kept making play after play. They maintained a slim lead pretty much the entire game, and the inevitable run that everyone thought was going to happen just never really happened. And then that last possession, I will never, ever forget that last possession with Taylor Persons coming down, taking a terrible shot. I mean, let's just be honest. Just an awful shot selection, but he ends up putting the three ball right in Rex Pfluger's face for the win. And then I had a chance to go in the locker room after the game as the team was celebrating, and it was just a really, really cool moment. As I wrote about, this Ball State team has been through something that no college team should ever have to go through, and they've bonded together as a team. Their hearts are still really heavy from what happened, but that was the biggest win of Coach James Whitford's career at Ball State, no question, and just a massive upset that was so much fun to be on the sidelines for.
Yeah, I'm sure that was a very wild ride. Just a crazy game there. But speaking of a team from Tennessee, what do you think Middle Tennessee has to improve to get back to the level that they were at last year and winning a tournament game?
I mean, I think they're better this year. Middle Tennessee
Really?
is great. They're great. They obviously losing a player like Reggie Upshaw is tough, but Nick King for them has been awesome. And not only did they win a tournament game last year, but the year before that was the Michigan State upset, the 15-2 that they pulled off. And I mean, Kermit Davis. This is a team that with seniors that have been through 2 NCAA tournament victories. I mean, there is not many mid-major teams, or any, that I can think of that have that kind of resume. And, I mean, they still have Giddy Potts there. And like I said, Nick King has been awesome for them, Brandon Walters. I mean, this team, their experience, they do not get rattled. I mean, in the Florida Gulf Coast game, the second one, at Florida Gulf Coast, they were down double digits a couple of times. And they are so composed. They make plays, and they have that top-level talent. I mean, Nick King, a guy 6'7" forward, left-handed, can finish really well at the rim, and he's a big man that shoots over 90% or close to 90% from the free throw line. This Middle Tennessee team, do not sleep on them. I mean, I have them ranked 7 in my mid-major rankings, but the top 7 teams, I would say there's a tier of those top 7 teams that all 7 of them are really, really good. And they belong on that tier. They are a really good team.
Yeah, I think that this team is just not as good as last year's team. I was just so impressed with what last year's team was able to do. They just ran through their conference schedule. They also, I think, beat Vandy by almost 30 points at Middle Tennessee. They were just a powerhouse in the mid-majors, and they were rightfully favored against Minnesota, and everybody pretty much picked them to win that game.
They could run through the conference again. I mean, I'll say this conference UCA is pretty good this year. Western Kentucky, Louisiana Tech, Old Dominion, those are three pretty good teams. But Middle Tennessee could run through their conference and put together a resume similar to last year's. That would not shock me.
Yeah, I'm not saying Middle Tennessee is bad or anything. I think you having them at around 7 is probably right around where I would have them. I just think that this year's team is not quite at the level that last year's team was at.
Yep.
And let's go to a team that I think could eventually be in like the top 7 or 8 teams once they get their star, Jalen Adams, back rolling. How good do you think St. Bonaventure is, and what do you think their ceiling is with Jalen Adams being healthy?
I mean, let's see where I have them. I have them 13 right now in my mid-major rankings, and I really think they could be on that top 7 tier that I was talking about. But it's impossible to know because he's just coming back from injury, and he hasn't really worked into form yet. But, I mean, this schedule coming up, Yale, Vermont, Syracuse, they still have, obviously the conference games starting, so they'll play a really good Rhode Island team and VCU and all those teams as well. So, we will see what this team is made of. I would say especially this Saturday and next Saturday, Yale and Vermont. If they win both those games convincingly, which they very well could, then they can prove, they can really, really move up to one of those top mid-major teams. I mean, it really helps when one of your all-conference first-team preseason guys goes down, that you have another all-conference preseason guy. That's a really nice thing to have that most teams can't boast. So that you can't say enough about especially Matt Mobley. He's been averaging 20 points a game in Jalen Adams' absence, so he's been great. And I think this team has definitely high hopes.
Yeah, I think that they're one of the best ranked 10 teams. I'm low on VCU and Dayton this season. I just have not been impressed with either of those. I think that St. Bonaventure could be in the top 2 or 3 along with Rhode Island.
Yep, I agree.
All right, so next question that we're going to be going into basically is, who do you think is the best mid-major player right now? And if it comes down to these two guys, Mike Daum and John Elmore, who are you more confident in being able to just carry their team to a victory in March Madness?
To me, no question, Kevin Hervey is the best mid-major player. And I even wrote this last week. He deserves to be recognized as better than just the best mid-major player. I mean, he is a force. And I mean, I don't know. I feel like people have been underrating him. I mean, he's been getting more buzz recently, but he is something else at his size, 6'9", on the perimeter shooting, and he can go down low and score, and he can pass out of double teams. To me, he's definitely the best player. Now, Mike Daum is an interesting case because coming into the season, people would have said hands down he's the best player in mid-major ranks, and he has been good, but compared to his impossible standards, he's kind of been a little disappointing this year. Now, you mentioned him or John Elmore, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see Marshall getting to the NCAA tournament. I mean, obviously there's a possibility of that. So South Dakota State has a better chance just because they'll be there, in my opinion. But Mike Daum hasn't shown his best stuff, and I think at some point this season he'll turn it around and look like the guy that he was last year. And he is certainly, when he plays like that, a guy that can change a game in the NCAA tournament. So I would go with Mike Daum, even though he hasn't really looked like it this year. Now, John Elmore's been great. 24 points a game and I think 8 assists. He's been awesome, but I don't think Marshall is that kind of team.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I was just so impressed with what Daum was able to do at Wichita State, dropping 31 points, 7 for 12 from three-point land. He single-handedly kept the Jackrabbits in that game, which they ended up losing by 10 points. Yeah, and last thing that we're going to talk about, in my opinion, the Pac-12 and the Big Ten being terrible. How many mid-majors do you think are going to be able to seal these bids, or do you think all these spots are just going to go to teams in the ACC, Big East, and Big 12?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really tough. Now, this is one of the last years before I really feel like all the Power Fives are going to move to 20-game conference schedules. They should, because then they can only play each other, and they're incentivized to get as many teams as they can from their conferences to the tournament, so I don't blame them for doing that. But it's so hard for these good mid-major teams to schedule good teams. It's so hard. And because of that, there are only a couple of mid-major teams that have a chance for an at-large bid. Even Nevada, who has a good resume going, unless they do well in conference play, I mean, they may not even be at-large worthy. But right now, the list of teams with at-large chances, I would give Nevada, Rhode Island, maybe Boise State if they play great. St. Mary's, I don't think they have really much of a chance unless they beat Gonzaga maybe twice in conference play. And even Northern Iowa, who has a really awesome resume, would need to go something crazy like 30-5, like I said. It is really honestly kind of unfair because these mid-major teams are really, really good. But the way the system is set up now, with the RPI being, the only thing that matters kind of, and, the matchups they're able to play, and these big teams being smart about squeezing these smaller teams out. I mean, maybe Middle Tennessee as well. I mean, they have some good wins. Florida Gulf Coast, Vanderbilt on the road. And if they beat some good teams in Conference USA. But I don't know. I mean, I would say Nevada and Rhode Island are about the only two teams with a real high probability of being at-large teams if they don't win their conferences. It's kind of bleak out there.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of sad looking at it because just I think the Pac-12 and the Big Ten are just awful, and they're going to get a couple teams in that don't deserve it just based
Yep.
on um, their like name recognition, and they have so many chances to get big wins that eventually you're just going to luck into like 2 or 3 big victories at home. Anything you have for me before we wrap this up?
No, this is it. I mean, it's cool being able to talk about the mid majors because I feel like a lot of national outlets, especially this time of year, don't really cover the mid major teams. So it's fun to be able to talk about them and write about them and talk about these teams that aren't getting a lot of press. So it's pretty fun.
Yeah, especially mid majors. I think that it's honestly a little bit easier betting on mid major games than it is betting on some of the Power Five games, just because sometimes you get lines that aren't exactly spot on, and you're able to take advantage of those. Where a lot of people are just going to be ignoring the lines in the mid major games, and that's where you can take advantage of them.
Yeah, I mean, these teams are getting slept on. That's really what it comes down to. People don't realize how good some of these mid major teams are. They are really, really good.
Yeah, I think it's totally different than football, where I think a lot of mid-major teams would kind of get pushed around against the big boys in the Power Five conferences. I think in basketball, it's a lot smaller of a gap between the Power Six or Seven, however, if you want to put the American in there, and the mid-majors.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree.
All right, so that will wrap it up for this episode of FHS Season Tickets. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like and also subscribe for more season ticket videos.